And I've seen individuals lose their life or lives over less than $1, over a bag of chips. It's just nowhere you want to be. Whoever attempts to glorify prison or prison life to you, or you think it's okay, it's not cool in there, man.
Hi, I'm Terrence Hardge. Thank you for joining us on Heart to Hearts. Today's guest is a man who served nearly 17 years in prison, but he had been sentenced to 144 years. Once he was released, he married his wife and opened a successful cosmetology school, helping people in the community. From prison to principal, his story inspires. Christopher Life Willars, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, sir. So help us understand life. How does a 19-year-old who has good grades, who was active duty in the United States Air Force, how does he get into trouble?
I love answering this question, and I just say simply the same way a lot of good, 19-year-old, 18-year-old, 17, year olds get in trouble. I didn't have the necessary support in what I consider the most volatile moment of development. And I say volatile because um, for me, I was growing up in Chicago, seeing some things. Um, and then, yeah, I was in the military and I was excelling, but I was still slightly angry. There was some trauma there. There was some unresolved issues with my parents getting a divorce. So I carried these things with me, and without them being, I like properly addressed, eventually they kind of came out or came to the surface in the wrong way.
I feel like I can identify. I don't easily say I can identify because we don't know everybody's circumstance, but I
That's
too
fair.
am from the Midwest. My
Mhm.
parents also divorced when I was very young, and I talked about in a recent episode about how that affected me. Life, it also fueled the energy for my first novel, Innocent Guilt, which deals heavily with the issue of an absentee father and how it devastates the main character named Moses. And I know you're working on your own book as well, and I encourage people to go out there and support. But tell me, what kind of support do you wish that you had had growing up?
Man, my mother is an angel, and my father was a good man too. They were just, they grew apart for whatever reasons. But I think I just in those moments, in those years, I needed that male presence in my life. My father, when they split, had moved out the state. He had moved down to Texas. So, and then me in the military being, shipped off to here, there, I didn't have access to him anyways. But I needed a stronger male role model, somebody that could challenge me. Because my mother, there was a point where she couldn't, not the way I needed to be challenged. And it was just that situation. And above all else, if not that, I just wish I would have had somebody that would have listened the right way I needed somebody to listen.
Totally understandable. Can you tell us about that day that led to the charges?
In short, as we were just speaking to her, as I was alluding to, I went from being this 19-year-old kid that, found his way out of Chicago into the military, was doing okay. And then again, because I didn't have the proper outlets, and somebody would say, well, you were in the military. And I'll tell you, just because you're in the military does not mean you're in a positive, supportive environment. There are a lot of people that are,
Yeah.
escaping negative, trauma-filled environments that are battling things with a uniform on, and salute to our veterans because I'm one too, and our soldiers. But I don't know. It because I didn't have that proper place to channel what I felt, those frustrations or whatever. It was only a matter of time until I met a certain situation or person that could kind of spark that negativity that was there, festering, that was unaddressed. And for that spark for me was my older cousin. Um, and I always, when I tell this story, I hold myself accountable. I don't want to sit here and ever paint the picture like he made me get in the vehicle, but I will tell you, we talk about peer pressure and things because they're a very real thing. And now, as a 41-year-old man, former veteran, former gang member that did time in prison, um, and all these things, I'll still tell you, back then, it was peer pressure. That's what got me. on top of that, it's no different. In this situation, I didn't join a gang. I was just following an older cousin and his homeboys in that moment. But it's no different than a kid growing up in Chicago, Cali, New York. You dealing with some things and you find you click up with some people and they're fostering more negative thinking habits than anything else. And that's what my cousin was on. I call him and his friends like 2-bit hustlers. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Now coming from somebody that unfortunately knows the streets, and the reality of them, they were some people that were playing the streets. They were 10 years older than me, at the least, of the three, and my cousin and his two friends. And I'd find my way over there, and they would always talk about robbing places or doing this and doing that. And I would never feed into it. And then one day, out of frustration, I was like, man, you know what? I'm tired of you guys talking. Let's go. It was just one of those things. I was, young man, they talking trash. Well, you ain't gonna go with us anyways. The only reason we ain't go because you ain't gonna drive. Da 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 da. Because that was the whole thing. They were trying to get me to just be the driver.
Right.
And then after 1 or 2 months of that peer pressure, those jokes that whatever that energy be throwing at me, I folded and I said, all right, let's go.
And nobody was hurt though, right?
No, so that the actual crime, in short, was a robbery, and the weapon was a BB gun, and I never got out the vehicle, and nobody was physically harmed. And I
Wow.
understand, yeah, I understand mental and emotional trauma, and I'll never downplay that. But um, to give a 19-year-old, young man 144 years for being a driver in a robbery, of which the weapon was not even a real weapon, it was a BB gun. That's crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
I can sit here and I get, and I'm grateful I get to go out to all these places and I speak. I'm going to California in a few weeks and all that. And I will never try to make that point or state that point in an eloquent way. I just, it's crazy. That's I need, yeah, to give that. But that's what's going on in courtrooms across the country Monday through Friday to this day.
Do you remember your first days in prison? Can you share some information about that?
Well, jail or prison? Because I always tell people there's a difference.
Tell us the difference for those who don't understand.
Yeah, so man, my first days in jail, which is where you go when you're initially locked up. Oh man, I was an infant in that area, in that environment. I knew nothing of that place. It was foreign to me. I wasn't given the bond. I wasn't, given the opportunity to come home. Once I was locked up, that was it.
Mm.
But I was placed in the hole, and the first thing I remember about being in jail, I couldn't eat the food. I couldn't even take the smell of it. The milk made me want to, vomit.
Wow.
And the smells down there, because and the noises, and it just smacks you. But when you're at the jail, you're still in the city that you were living, or where the crime was committed. There's some sort of familiarity generally there when you're at the jail. You're typically going to know more people, especially if you're from that town or whatnot. Even though I wasn't there, I did live there for a few months before getting incarcerated. Prison is a different game. While jail, a lot of people are going home. Prison, this is where people are staying. This is where they live. And for me, my prison stay, I went from jail to a level 4 prison, maximum security, where over 70% of the camp had life sentences.
Oh
And
wow.
I went there again as a first time offender, former veteran. I always got to illustrate that point. Driver of a robbery that involved a BB gun. The biggest thing with prison is you understand very quickly you may not make it home from it. You know that.
I've heard you talk about the different levels. I even saw you talk about how it was difficult to go down to a level one. Can you
Yeah.
talk about those different levels and the challenges there?
Yeah. So for me, I was on a level 4, which was I say 23 and 1, but really it was about 18 and 6. 18 hours you'll be in your cell, 6 hours you'll be out. Very controlled to the point where they had gunners in the pod. Individuals that had guns that could shoot rubber projectiles or live rounds if needed, pointed at you. So when you're in the pod trying to watch TV, there's a gun pointed at you. When you're going to take a shower, there's a gun pointed when
Wow.
you're on the phone trying to tell your mother you love her, and you're sorry that you're going through this, there's a gun pointed at you. Same thing when you go to chow. When you're going to eat, there's a gun pointed at you. And this is all I knew for years. And I tell people PTSD is real,
Mhm.
and there's levels to it, just like prison, right?
Right.
So when I got shipped to a level 3, I remember, and I need to tell this story, man, because I just remember this. When I got sent to a level 3, the main difference was on a level 4, wherever you moved on that boulevard, the officers had to be with you. On a level 3, if the officer said, "Hey, go to medical," they'll open the door, you go to medical. I had became so institutionalized from being on a level 4 that I had got called to medical, and I walked down to the front door, from my building, and I just stood there on the boulevard, and I was just waiting for a CO to come escort me down the boulevard. And another CO was like, "Hey, man, you okay? Where you where you supposed to be going?" I was like, are you supposed to be taking me to medical, right? He's like, nah, you just walk there by yourself. So yeah, it was moments like that, stepping down. And then level 2s are just the difference between, I guess, the cutoff where it becomes severe to less severe is between that 3 and a 2 where I was at. Because then it goes from prison to dorm style. And dorms typically are safer, at least where I was at.
I'm blessed to spend quite a bit of my time actually mentoring young men who are around the age of 19 and 20 in their early 20s and even early 30s. People these days are comparing themselves to what's on IG, what's on
Yeah,
social media, and people are
yeah.
still trying to find out who they are. With that said, I just like to ask you just a couple questions, about the experience. Were there predators in prison? Can you tell just a little bit about the prison culture that may encourage our youth to not go there?
Yeah, I mean, man, prison is full of predators on every level. You're surrounded by murderers, con men, thieves, manipulators. Everybody in there, for the most part, is trying to survive. Very few people are okay financially. It's just one of those environments where there's no rest, there's no peace,
Yeah.
because everybody is just on going there. You've got sexual predators that'll try you. I don't care how gangster you are or how big you are. If they feel like you're new to a compound, or they strike up a conversation, you go for it. Hey, they might try you. I've seen individuals, 6'5" running around on camps where the police would let them right back out of the hole after they, SA'd somebody, on the camp. And the
SA,
guards,
I'm sorry, sir. What's that?
yeah, sexually assault.
Sexual. Got it.
Yeah. But after he essayed somebody, they'll let him right back out onto the institution because the police don't care. You know what I'm saying? I've seen individuals lose their life over, or lives over, less than $1, over a bag of chips, Moon Lodge, two ramen noodles.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, I've seen it all, man. I've seen fathers turn on sons inside of prison.
Mm.
It's just nowhere you want to be. Whoever attempts to glorify prison or prison life to you, or you think it's okay, it's not cool in there, man. There's nothing cool about sleeping surrounded by concrete and steel. A bunch of people you don't want to be around, you wouldn't be around. Like, it's just bad. And then I would also say this: what America needs to know, the violence level in the jails and the prisons has escalated.
Man.
That it's went from a time where you wouldn't see a knife in jail. Now there's knives in jails. People are dying, getting stabbed to death in the jails. So
You,
it's everything's escalating.
you mentioned fathers turning on sons. Now, I've seen at least one movie with
Mhm.
that plot in there. Does that happen a lot where family members end up in the same prison? Is that unusual, or is that something that happens quite a bit?
No, it happens quite a bit. Incarceration's modern day slavery. It's not uncommon to see generations inside the same prison or in the same cell. It just is what it is. Another one of those things it's not really spoke of. But one thing that we pass on, unfortunately, a lot of times our people, is prison.
Right.
So you do see the grandfathers and the father. I've been on an institution where the grandfather, the father, and the son were all in the same father.
Wow. Life, what would you like for people to know about you?
Oh man. When you see me, you're not looking at me. You're looking at Jefferson Ellie. You're looking at Andre McLean. You're looking at countless individuals that are incarcerated, juveniles, women included, innocent people that are incarcerated, um, wrongfully accused. You're seeing somebody that works hard every day to be a representation, a voice for oftentimes those that are the voiceless. And that's it. I do a lot. People are like, "What do you do?" I do a lot, but everywhere you see me doing that.
This is only part one of our interview with Christopher Life Willars. Don't worry, there's more. We'll talk about his love story, his school, how he helps the community, shares his story, and how he deals with PTSD, and find out why we have a moment that gets this man choked up. Meanwhile, go spread joy with a contagious smile, and a hug doesn't hurt. You never know what life you might be changing or whose heart you might be healing. Catch you next time.
You know,
How is it that they're able to get away with that?
welcome
Why?
to America.
Welcome to Heart to Hearts. I'm Terrence Hardge, and today's episode is brought to you by my novel, Innocent Guilt, which deals with secrets, legal issues, healing, and redemption. Feel free to grab a copy on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Meanwhile, let's hop back into our interview with Christopher Life Willars. Speaking of medical, one of the
Mhm.
things I saw that you mentioned was that you had a traumatic dental experience. And it's something that people don't think about. When we're out here and we're going to a doctor, we get to choose doctors, we get to choose care. You care to tell us about that traumatic dental experience you dealt
Man,
with?
you see, I sat back, crossed my arms. No, but that's why I get up here. I take pride in trying to discuss things people typically don't think about when it comes to incarceration, confinement, going to court, whatever, right? So, but what you were just referring to is this like traumatic dental experience that I went through, and some people thought it was humorous for whatever reason, but I could tell you, man, there's nothing more traumatizing than knowing that the people that are in charge of working on your body or your health aren't qualified. And I went in there for a simple tooth extraction. And after the tooth broke off 2 or 3 times, I understood quickly, they weren't qualified to do this job. Um, and in the midst of that extraction, I think the worst part was the tooth was lodged up and stuck up, and they no longer could give me any more Novocaine.
Mhm.
So this is crazy because this is
Man.
this is I don't understand how things like this can occur, but this is why I continue to run my mouth. They knew they had messed up, and I knew it was serious because the dentist assistant was holding my hand, which isn't allowed in that environment, and she started to sing gospel music to me because she knew I was in pain. And I had asked them, I said, "Can I just stand up?" Because they said, "Well, you can." This is what they told me. With the tooth now lodged up, stuck up partially out my gum, they said, "Well, you can go back to the dorm to the morning, and we can get you sent out to us to a dental surgeon, or we can try to complete it right now." So I'm sitting here, I'm in excruciating pain, and they're saying, "You can wait till the morning, or you can let us get it out right now, but we can't give you no more Novocaine." And I paced up and down that hallway. I was sweating, and man, but I sat down in that chair, and hey, she sang a little bit louder, and they did what they did. And eventually, the pain was over with. But I illustrate that point because every day there's medical malpractice behind those walls.
Yeah.
It's not just dental. I've watched individuals lose their lives.
Oh,
I
wow.
the One of the
Man.
most frequent ways individuals lose their lives during incarceration is cardiac arrest. And
Mm.
I can tell you, I used to watch men go down from cardiac arrest, and it would take 10 minutes for the nurses to get there. And then they got to call 911 because they're not equipped, and I can go on and on, but that's why I tell the stories that I do, you know.
How is it that they're able to get away with that?
Welcome
Why?
to America. Nobody cares about the prison. At the end of the day, nobody really cares about the prison. If society has to choose between themselves and a prisoner, they're going to choose themselves. So the issues that those people that have that those of us that were formerly incarcerated, those that are incarcerated, they're not pronounced enough. There's not enough people doing the work to get the messaging out there about situations like an individual where a man just months ago got ate to death in Fulton County Jail by bed bugs. Y'all can Google this. It's in the
Wow.
news. Ate to
It's
death.
terrible.
Things like this aren't supposed to happen. You know what I'm
I,
saying? Where I'm down here in Georgia, And I can tell you there's homicides in the prison every week down here. They don't talk about it in the news. We're in a country that acknowledges it needs, severe criminal justice reform, but man, there's a lot of problems going on.
Life, what can people do to make things better?
Just get involved. And if you don't know how to get involved, get connected. There's a network of advocates, organizations, activists, organizers, believe it or not, very similar to the civil rights movement of the 60s. We may look different, we may not be as pronounced, but you have to understand it may look like it was a million people in the civil rights movement back then, but it wasn't. It was a few people. It just looks that way now.
Yeah,
So find us. You know what I'm saying? If you see my shirt, just look the Life Unit Inc. I'm connected to organizations nationally for everything that I do. What I do is I get involved politically and I go and I build coalitions and I help build voter bases from the inside out from prisons because statistics and data says that 1 out of every 2 people in this country is impacted by incarceration. So you should be concerned. And if you're somebody that says, hey, I don't care about those people that are locked up, well, you should care because you should want them to be rehabilitated because the majority are returning to a community near you.
that's
So
right.
you should want them better. You should want them with better mental health, faculties in place. You should want them with financial literacy. You should want them with job opportunities. So get involved. Find us if you don't know how, and just start to be a voice.
That is right. You mentioned PTSD earlier, and I was thinking about how sometimes I might have a dream about someone that I love who has already passed away. This is not PTSD, but sometimes we're kind of displaced in time in our dream. I
Lucid
was just
dreaming.
wondering, do you ever have dreams where you think you're back in prison and then you wake up to realize that you're not? Does that happen to you?
Um, yeah, but I think I know the reason for mine. I go back into the prisons. I go back into the halfway houses and I facilitate groups and I speak. So I'm voluntarily going back into the fire. So I expect to somewhat get burned and or at least smell like smoke. And thankfully, I do therapy and good support around me. I'm healthy enough to go into those environments. But yeah, I do have the occasional dream. I do have not even necessarily a dream, the occasional anxiety. You know, I'm all right out here. I'm pretty, I'm good in the community. I've been fortunate to be in the news a few times and I do good things out here. I live my life 100% the right way, but there's still moments I'm scared to death because I'm a convicted felon
Yeah.
and I live in America.
I was really moved by one of your posts where you were talking about what it's like to lose loved ones when you're
Mhm.
locked up. I mean, it's tough enough being free. Can
Yeah.
you talk about your experience with that?
Yeah, I always tell these young men it's like one of my last ditch messages because I do intervention work and hey, some people just they not hearing. And one thing I do try to do before, it's all said and done is I try to shift the focus back on the mama or the grandma or your children because one thing you don't get back is time, right? And if you don't care about your time, fine, cool. That's your time to not care about, cool. But I'm pretty sure you want to be able to spend time with your mom because you don't
Right.
know if you're gonna be able to say you don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. So for me, I lost my father, I lost my grandmother, I lost my little brother. The list goes on and on. I was in there for 17 years. I mean, all three of those. It was funny with my father. My family didn't want to tell me, so I found out late. So that made it worse. With my grandmother, she had wrote a letter about a month prior that the prison sent back and didn't let me receive because she put her address on there with a sticker. And I had wrote her a letter and said, "Hey, grandma, I seen you wrote me, I love you, da, da, da," and then I never got anything back. And next thing I knew, here comes my mother up to the prison telling me she passed. And then I remember getting a call one time. I'm sitting there in prison, and I get a call, and I find out my little brother blew his brains out. So I tell these people, I tell these young men, yo, don't don't put yourself in the situation that I was in. You don't want to feel this trauma. You don't. No matter and I tell these, no matter how up I may seem to y'all, which I'm good, there's certain weights that I'm gonna have to walk around with forever that you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
very real. So, and don't take me, laughing or chuckling, but I processed it that much that I'm so focused on the message now, and
Right.
trying to get them to understand that, man, some goodbyes you don't get back,
Right.
So I just had a brother call me from prison. His mother just passed. He didn't get to say goodbye to, and the list goes on and on, man. Death is a real and it does not stop because you're in prison.
Right.
Stay free so you can spend time with your loved ones, even if you don't care about your own time.
Switching gears to something more positive, I was really inspired by your story of getting married to your wife, April. Is
Mm.
there anything you want to share about your love story? I just thought it was, unique. Can you share anything about your story with her?
I will just say, presently, we're getting ready to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary. We've been together for 7, and that's my best friend. That's all I can really say. We've been through hell.
Mhm.
We've been through hell, back hell again. We met in 2017 while I was still finishing up 17-year, prison sentence. Met on business. I was running a nonprofit already from inside the prison with a buddy of mine. It was pretty successful, and I just needed an outside voice because I was getting ready to try to branch us outside of prison walls into the community. And we were introduced to mutual friends because I was doing some work already in there as a speaker, and she had knew about me, and that was it. Me and April just started talking, speaking on business, and it just, conversation grew. And two like-minded individuals, two people that, well, I couldn't have been in a rush to start, anything serious, but her not being in a rush either gave us an opportunity to focus on the pros of being in a situation like that where the physical can't get involved. Out here in 2024 or whatever, second date, physical involved, you don't even know who you're dealing with. So we focused on that. And man, I don't know. We grew together, got married in the visitation room, didn't necessarily want to. But knew that I needed to come straight to Georgia instead of staying in Virginia, just in terms of being successful and opportunities for somebody coming home from incarceration. That was the path. And then came home after 17 years with a wife, a mortgage, and PTSD. And I also came home right before the pandemic. So that's why I always say, man, my wife's my best friend. I tell a joke to the young brother. I say I'm home every night before the street lights is on, and it's very true. It's and I don't leave the house. I don't leave the house unless it's business or I'm with my wife. I'm just that way. I always give her credit, and I love when she jumps on my social media or whatever and kind of speaks up for the spouses or the loved ones of those that are incarcerated, and she's able to give them a lot of insight and advice because it hasn't always been easy. There's been
Right.
some dark moments. PTSD is very real. That's why I talk about mental health, and I'm a mental health advocate. And I don't want to jinx it, but we're like in the best. It seems like we figured it out pretty quick. People say it takes like 7 years to figure it out. Right now, we're feeling pretty good. Yeah. And then of
Michael,
course oh, my fault. And
no,
then I
go
was
ahead,
gonna
my
say,
brother. I'm listening.
yeah, I was gonna say, and then of course, we opened a school together too. I was just
Yeah,
gonna add, yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I definitely have some questions about the school, but before we hop into that, what's the best way for a spouse or a loved one or girlfriend or boyfriend to support somebody coming out of the prison system,
Um,
particularly if they have PTSD and are really kind of struggling with reintegrating?
yeah. So, mental health resources, if possible. If you can arrange for access to some sort of support group, something like that, some sort of aftercare, because 9 times out of 10, the mental health inside a prison where your loved one is at is probably nowhere. I would just focus on aftercare. That's what I tell the majority of the families. And then I would also say, as far as like the work you can do prior to the individual coming home, is don't let them lose grasp of the world.
Right.
Like don't let them feel isolated inside a prison. When you guys have conversations, allow them to vent because they're going to probably have plenty to vent about. They're in prison, but also redirect their conversation at some point back to freedom. One thing my wife did, she asked me, especially as I got shorter, she was like, "You need to start giving something away once a month," because
Mm,
she knew I was one of those guys that had all the sneakers and jeans. You need to start get. That's not your home. I was like,
that's good.
I don't want to do it. I'm keeping my stuff, and then
Yeah.
of course I was like, all right, you're right. And I started to feel better because I was letting go of prison the shorter I got. So it was a physical activity she gave me. And then another thing she did was she would give me, and I say give me the opportunity for input when it came to what was going on outside of prison walls, because I wasn't out here. But it could have been just what she was getting ready to paint the living room. Hey, I'm thinking about painting the living room. What color? She might send me the colors to look at. It's little things like that that gave me my value and helped me get a sense of reality before I got out of prison, if that made sense. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just boom, jumping straight out there.
Makes real good sense. We're not done with life's story. We'll wrap it up with part 3. Find out why he gets choked up. Meanwhile, go spread joy with a contagious smile, and a hug doesn't hurt. You never know what life you might be changing or whose heart you might be healing. See you next time. Even the toughest get choked up. Get ready to find out why. Christopher Willars goes by life, but he was sentenced to 144 years for being a driver in a robbery that involved a BB gun when he was 19 years old. He served nearly 17 years in prison. Now a principal, he serves as a positive force in the community. This episode is brought to you by Fatal Perception, my novel, found on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'm Terrence Hardge, and welcome to Heart to Hearts. Why do you go by the name Life?
Oh man. In prison, I was a hard-headed knucklehead, put the fire off fighter. In short, just like those typical like old school prison movies, I had some good brothers, older brothers kind of pull up on me one day. And the reason they pulled up on me was because I had influence. Like I was one of those, I used to get along with everybody and it trickled over into prison. At the time, I was a gang leader. I had influence and I was leading a lot of brothers the wrong way. And I had two brothers, one by the name of Poetic Life of Law. He was a 5%er, Nation of Gods and Earths, which is just a school of thought or a culture. You can just research it, but it just basically teaches Black and brown people to value themselves and the history that who they are. And then Brother Willie pulled up on me with him as well. And he was the Nation of Islam. Brother Willie inside the prison was the minister in there for basically the top dog. And Brother Willie was about 6'5". And you know what I'm saying? Dark as night, and pulled up on me and said, "You don't even know who you is," just like that, which I just told him that I imitated him 2 days ago when we were on the phone. But he challenged me and the other brother challenged me. And when they said that, they were like, "You don't even know who you are." I looked at him like, "Yo, y'all, who y'all talking to? Y'all crazy." And then they walked off, and then I got to thinking about it. And next thing I know, they had me reading books, you know, and I don't know, learning and working out, and not for nothing, learning how to be a man. So the name Life, it got given to me by my big brother because I got knowledge of self in there with the 5%ers, which again, I just got to be clear because people are like, that's a racist group. No, it's not anti-Black, or we're not, excuse me, not pro-Black or anti-white. We're pro-righteousness, anti-establishment. You know what I'm saying? We don't like negativity. That's it. But they gave me that name in there, and he gave me that name because I ran my mouth. I used to be in there everywhere. I used to not let guys be depressed in there. I used to get in there and be talking crap to them. I was just that guy, you know, in prison. You know, I get the cracking jokes on the COs. I didn't care. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But at the same time, I was always somebody that was trying to help people. So they was just like, bro, you bring life, you know, everywhere you go. So yeah, just started running with it. And then that's what everybody called me for years now, you know, and then family, and it just transferred over because it's a positive thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I really like it. You
Thank
mentioned the Nation of Islam, and I saw another post you made about a church service there where there were only a
you.
few
Yeah, I'm
people. You
glad.
kind of got involved with that. And
Yeah.
can you talk to about that? I think you kind of stirred up some extra people to come to the service.
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that question. I am a saved Jesus died for my sins, but I had a journey and I'm glad I did. You know, I went through these different chapters in my life, but that's what enables me or allows me to be able to connect with different people from different walks of life. I know some of the same languages that they speak, so to say. But yeah, the church situation, towards the end of my bid, they sent me on a level one. It's like a road camp. I wasn't even supposed to be on a level one. They had told me for years, you're never gonna go to a level one, but they moved me one day. But I wasn't allowed off the camp. It was a work camp, and I had to stay on the camp while everybody else was able to leave. So whenever they would call programs in there, because there was barely anything to do there, and I was stuck in the building all day, I'd want to go. So I noticed they every time they called church though, only like two or three people would go. And at the time, there's like I don't know, about 150 people in the building altogether, give or take. And I found that really peculiar because I was like on a Sunday, I said that's crazy. So I went in there one time for church call when they called it. It was the same two or three guys. And actually I went in there because I was bored. And then I got to arguing with the guys. But it wasn't like, we weren't arguing, but I was like, man, more people supposed to be in church. This is crazy. We need God. I don't even know where I was going. And then we were in the cafeteria because that's where the church service is at. And the next thing you know, before the end of that day, there was like five or six people. And I was just running my mouth. And then they asked me to come back. They're like, man, just come and do the same thing. Just run, just read out the Bible next time. And if you need, and I didn't know enough about the Bible, but I knew Jesus died for my sins. I knew that. And I had an older brother there that he did know about the Bible. He'd sit down with me and he'd get in the concordance and point things out. And I go in there Sunday and I do the best that I could do. And it weren't me though. I know it weren't me, but next thing I know, it was like 40 or 50 of us in there.
Wow.
And yeah, and then next thing you know, they were sending the COs in there to investigate me because they swore that I was in there recruiting gang members or I was in there trying to cause an uprising. But we went from two or three members to a church with a choir, ushers. Like we really made it a thing in there. Um, and yeah, it was cool, man. Some of those COs, they when we did altar calls, some of them same ones that came in there to be nosy, I'm called nosy, see what we was doing, ended up being saved. So
Wow.
hey man, we whatever it takes, I guess.
That's that's awesome, man. That's inspired. I'm a believer too. I accept Jesus into my heart, man. And it's just so weird to watch a lot of people because sometimes people may never see a cell, but people may be physically free, but totally imprisoned in their minds, man. So
Yeah,
that
most
that's
definitely.
it's really inspiring. Can you tell us about your school, my brother?
Oh yeah, man. So yeah, our school, Lasting Layers of Beauty Institute, it is a vocational school in Tucker, Georgia. And we have multiple programs. We have master cosmetology, esthetician, nail technology, hair design, and instructors programs. We opened 2/22/22 and had four graduations, and we got a 100% graduation rate, which
That's awesome.
I'm definitely, we're trying to keep that alive and fight forward with that. Um, I don't know, like in short, the school was my wife's dream. She had already been a licensed master cosmetologist. She was in school to become an instructor. Um, and I went to school to become a barber, not because I wanted to become a barber, but I just wanted to impress her and get her to marry me. And that was really it. And I just being honest. And it's funny because it worked out, I had made a decision to support her dream first because you got to be strategic in marriage and you got to take your ego out and understand,
That's
marriage
true.
is business too,
Yeah.
y'all, just so you know. But
Mhm.
um, we found a path of success with it and we poured out everything that we could, that including down to our last dime. We had ran out of money, like a month before we opened, but two first generation entrepreneurs, one from Chicago, one from 7 Mile, Detroit. Hey, we just went at it. We just went. We figured it out. We focused on instilling a good culture in there. We went against what everybody begged us not to do, and we lowered our tuition. We purposely to the lowest in Atlanta, all the way to 125 a week. Just because we know everything's expensive as heck, and we wanted to give our students an opportunity to graduate debt free.
Yeah.
So we're able to, provide those opportunities. And then also I want to say one thing that's unique about our school that I'm proud of is not only we got like the world's greatest staff, but we teach more than just beauty curriculum. We teach financial literacy. We teach
Wow.
business 101. We teach whatever you want to teach. If we don't teach it, we'll find somebody to come in there and at least teach it for a day or a couple hours. So yeah.
You know, like one thing that I thought was really meaningful about your school, I saw that one student said it was like her second home. Um,
Yeah. Oh
it's
man.
you all really connect with the people that are there. Really can are they young adults that come or
Not everybody. Not everybody. Youngest is 17,
mm,
but very much a family. And all the way, all age, all the way up. But I can tell you, it's a household in there. It's man, we have very real moments. And we figure it out and we press forward as not just as staff or just as students, but together. I facilitate an environment where the students have a voice just as much as the staff do. You know, they
yeah,
know I'm there to protect the educational goals.
right.
Um, and I'm also the guy that stands up there in front, the class body and say, "Hey, we messed up this week right here, but we're gonna get it right. Thank you for pointing that out." So accountability is in the building, and people know that they can have conversation and transparency. And then because of the work that I do, and the students know it, for the students that are going through, I call heavier things, I'm able to have conversation.
Mm,
Oftentimes, conversations come to me, um, and then sometimes, man, I've had, and I can speak about it, but I've had situations where one of my students got assaulted and the police called me. You know,
mm.
they said, who do we need to call? And instead of calling her father or her parents, it was Mr. Chris. So, just working. That's all.
Yeah. So
Y'all gonna give me, hey, got me tearing up over here.
no worries. So life I have
Real
to
though,
ask.
man. It's real.
Yeah. And that's a blessing, man. That is a blessing. Man, were you initially hesitant to tell your students that you were incarcerated?
Yeah, man. I was extremely hesitant. Hesitant to the point that I had jumped on TikTok, went viral, and then just jumped off social media again because I was like, I don't want to mess the school up. And my message was positive. Like to this day, it has always been the same thing. I've just been trying to educate people about, but I was like, I don't want to bring the two together. And then I had started going viral on TikTok. One of the posts like hit like 6 million views or something. I don't know what it was. And the news reached out and they're like, we want to do a story on the school from prison to principal. And as a business owner, your first 2 years, so you can get your business in news in a positive light, you need to do that because
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I was placed in a situation where it was like, all right, it's time. You know, my wife had always said like, don't hide. There's no need to hide. Like, just be who you are.
It's
But I was
beautiful.
still hesitant. But the day came where I kind of had to go in there and tell all the students I called. I made this. Hey, I need everybody to come to the floor. I remember I was sweating and everything. I came out there because the news was getting. I had to tell them, and I said, "Hey guys, I got something to tell you." And one of the students was like, "Mr. Chris, we already know." And she held her phone up. She's like, "We've been following you." And I was like, "Man, I'm getting up out of here." And everybody was laughing. We kept it going. But it was good when we broke the ice officially because that's when the real conversations in the school began. That's when they started to come with the stuff that they going through. It
Yeah.
was no they knew they no longer had to walk around in the school as students often do with a certain type of face or posture. Because now, hey, my principal, well, executive director, because people are like, there's no principals. I just use the term principal, y'all, because executive director is super formal to me. But once your executive director has been in prison for 17 years, you come as you are for sure.
Right.
You come as
Absolutely.
ain't no need. I ain't gonna judge you.
Man, that is awesome. That's so inspiring. Life, what can people do to make things better? Not only for loved ones who may be locked up and incarcerated, what can people do?
Just get involved. And if you don't know how to get involved, get connected. There's a network of advocates, organizations. activists, organizers, believe it or not, very similar to the civil rights movement of the 60s. We may look different, we may not be as pronounced, or but you have to understand it may look like it was a million people in the civil rights movement back then, but it wasn't. It was a few people. It just looks that way now.
Yeah,
So find us. You know what I'm saying? If you see my shirt, just look the Life Unit Inc. I'm connected to organizations nationally. Um, for everything that what I do is I get involved politically and I go and I build coalitions and I help build voter bases from the inside out from prisons because statistics and data says that 1 out of every 2 people in this country is impacted by incarceration. So
yeah,
you should be concerned. And if you're somebody that says, hey, I don't care about those people that are locked up, well, you should care because you should want them to be rehabilitated because the majority are returning to a community near you.
that's
So
right.
you should want them better. You should want them with better mental health, faculties in place. You should want them with financial literacy. You should want them with job opportunities. So get involved. Find us if you don't know how. Just start to be a voice.
Where can
Um,
people follow you? Where can they support?
yeah, you can find me everywhere. Christopher Life Willars. If you want to just see my social media stuff, my more personal stuff is, any of my seminar series, anything like that coming up, just Christopher Life Willers. And if you want to see what my organization's doing, my 501(c)(3), if you want to get connected to us, see what we have going on, see how you can support or get in one of our programs, whatever, just go to thelifeunit.org. Or you can check out the Life Unit Inc. Facebook or IG. You can get a lot of information there as well.
Well, I really want to thank you for coming on Life. This show is one that's dedicated to trying to bring hope to situations that feel destitute, to trying to understand people that come from different backgrounds. And so I just want to say thank you for joining us, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
All right. My friends, go spread joy with a contagious smile, and a hug doesn't hurt. You never know whose life you might be changing or whose heart you might be healing. With my special guest, Life, thank you for joining us.
Nice having me. Thank you. Thank you.